Now that we're done with our body as well as our head, we're going to put them together. One way to do it is to add stitch markers to where we'll be attaching the body to the head. I'm going to start by placing her body on the middle of her head. This is the middle of the head here, and I just placed the body on top of it, lining them up as best as I could. Then I matched the stitch on the head to the stitch on the body that match each other. So it looks like they match this stitch here, and I'm going to get a stitch marker and place it in that stitch. I'm going to continue the same process of putting the body over the head and marking the stitches with the stitch marker to the ones that correspond to each other. As you can see, I'm not marking each stitch, but just enough so we get a general idea of a circle. As you move along, keep aligning the body with the stitch markers. By putting in the stitch markers first, if you make a mistake, all you have to do is just remove the stitch marker rather than removing stitches that are sewn in. For example, I just put this one too high as I remeasured the head, so I'm just going to remove the stitch marker and put it in the right place. Once we have all of our stitch markers in and the fit all around looks good, we're ready to sew on the head. We're going to start by threading from inside the body. We're going to look for the stitch that's closest to the middle, and we're just going to pull our yarn right through. We're going to take our yarn and measure about 3 times around the neck area, which should be enough to stitch around. And then we're just going to keep that much pulled through. Next, we're going to go through the stitch where our stitch marker is, that's at the back of her head. And then we're just going to pull that through. We're going to go through the same stitch on the body. And then we're going to go into the next stitch on the body. And then we're going to go through the corresponding stitch on the top of the head. And the same thing, we're going to go back into that same stitch on the body and then through the next stitch. And then again, we're going to go back to the head and go through the corresponding stitch on that side. We're going to continue to do this until we get all the way around her head, her gigantic head. Just remember to always go back into that same stitch on the body area. This way, when we're finished, we can pull the tails and it'll tighten up the stitches around the head. Just remember, when going around, follow the stitch markers, and then you can also take the stitch markers out when you reach them. When you get to the end, you should be back at your starting stitch, and there should be 2 tails left. One should have the darning needle and the other the one that we started out with. Pull the tail that we started out with, and all the stitches on the left-hand side should tighten up. Then on the right-hand side, all the right-hand side stitches should tighten up. Pull them as tight as possible so that the neck is nice and sturdy. Once that's done, take the 2 tails together and cut them close to the head, but enough left so that you can tie a knot. After the knot is tied, you can just stick it back into the stitch with the crochet hook and cut off any excess tails. And now we're done with attaching Hello Kitty's head to her body.